Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today is our second grant series, and we are joined with the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for Humanities and California Humanities and California Arts Council as well. We have today, sorry, one second. We have Ben Kessler from the National Endowment of Arts, and we have Alison from the National Endowment for Humanities, Kirsten Vega from California Humanities, Jonathan from California Arts Council, and Kiana Moore as well. I'll let you all introduce yourself briefly if you'd like for a few minutes. So go ahead. Ben, we can start with you.
Sure, Ben Kessler, Congressional Affairs for the National Endowment for the Arts. Really grateful to be here. Thank you, Monica and Alison, for having us.
Hi, I'm Alison with the National Endowment for the Humanities, Director of Congressional Affairs. I'm very excited to be with everyone today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Vega, Program Associate at California Humanities, and it's lovely to be here. Thanks for having us.
Jonathan Moscone, very newly appointed Executive Director of the California Arts Council. Very honored to be part of this team. And with my partner here, Kiana Moore.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kiana Moore, Outreach and Events Coordinator with the California Arts Council, and I'm grateful to share this space with you today.
Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and get started with our slideshow. We'll start off with the National Endowment of Arts and California Arts Council as well.
Great, thanks so much, Monica, and really just so grateful to the Congressman for all that he does for the arts, and again to Monica and Alison from the Congressman's office for bringing us together today. And I'm joining this afternoon with warmest greetings from our chair, Dr. Maria Rosario Jackson, a native Californian. President Biden nominated Dr. Jackson in October of 2021, and she was confirmed by the United States Senate in December of last year. And Chair Jackson has really implored us to continue to strengthen our work with communities across the country, which is why I'm so excited to be joining this conversation today. And since you all are here, I trust that you know at least some about the National Endowment for the Arts, but just a quick word about who we are, and that the NEA is a federal agency and the largest funder of the arts and arts education in communities nationwide. And our goal today is not only to provide a deep dive into the NEA's funding opportunities, but we really want to demystify the National Endowment for the Arts and our application process. Along the way, you'll see organizations from your area who have received grants from the NEA recently, and whether you're a seasoned grant writer or applying with us for the first time, regardless of the size of your organization, we really want you to leave today knowing that an NEA grant is within your reach and that you have the technical assistance tools you need when applying with us. And please know that this is the beginning of a conversation. So stay in touch with me, and I'll put my email in the chat, or reach out to the Congressman's office, and I'm sure Monica and Alison will be happy to put you in touch with us as well. Just the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So with Congressman Correa's support, the NEA is able to fund organizations directly at the federal level and in partnership with the 6 regional arts organizations and the 56 state and jurisdictional arts agencies and at the local level. So I'm really excited to be joined by John with the California Arts Council, and we really couldn't do this without the work of those who have the greatest knowledge and proximity to their communities, which is why 40% of all of our grant-making dollars flow to the regional arts organizations and state arts agencies. So when you're considering about what federal funds might be available to you, always keep in mind to be applying at the federal, regional, state, and local level. Just the next slide, please. Thank you. So there are certain requirements that you must meet to be eligible for an NEA grant. You have to be a nonprofit at the time of application. So it could be moments before the time of application, but must be a nonprofit at the time of application. a unit of state or local government, or a federally recognized tribal community or tribe, again, at the time of applying. You must have a 3-year history of arts programming. It doesn't have to be 3 consecutive years, just 3 years of arts programming. You must provide a 1-to-1 cost share or a match of non-federal funds. And please keep in mind that the match can be achieved in a variety of ways, including earned and donated income. And the match can also be a combination of any of those sources. And if you're ever considering applying with us, but the match seems too daunting, please get in touch with us and we can think through how you might be able to come up with a match. We never want that requirement to be a barrier to entry for you. And for previous grant recipients, you must be in compliance with reporting requirements for previous NEA awards. And this next slide, please. So our funding supports arts projects. And on the left side of the screen, you'll see the types of organizations that are eligible to apply for funding. Eligibility is open again to tax-exempt organizations, and I'm repeating myself, I know, but just 501c3 nonprofits, units of state or local government, including local arts agencies and educational institutions, federally recognized tribal communities and tribes. And it's important to note that for K through 12 schools, school districts are eligible for funding, but not individual schools themselves. On the right side of the screen, you'll see examples of things we're not able to fund, which include general operating support, individual artists with the exception of our fellowships in literature and honorific programs, commercial activities, and fiscal sponsors. And if you have any questions and looking for the full list of what we are able to fund and what we're not able to fund, please take a look at our website at arts.gov. So next slide, please. Thank you. So these are the different funding categories offered by the NEA. The NEA has funding opportunities for organizations that include grants for arts projects, Challenge America, Our Town, and our research grants. These are the largest grants we offer, and nonprofit organizations receive the bulk of our direct funding. Grants for individuals, again, are limited to literary fellowships, and we do offer recognition for jazz artists through the aforementioned honorific programs, the NEA Jazz Masters, and folk and traditional artists through our National Heritage Fellowship program. Generally, you can submit 1 application per year per organization. However, there are some exceptions to the rule, so always make sure you're checking out our website for clarity. Next slide, please. Thanks so much. So we really like to think of Challenge America as an entry point or on-ramp when applying at the NEA if you haven't applied with us before. In order to be eligible for a Challenge America grant, you must not have been funded through the NEA in the last 3 years. Challenge America primarily supports organizations to extend the reach of the arts to populations that are underserved. All grantees must address in their application how their organization or audience has been underserved. And this is this is defined by our authorizing legislation by Congress and agency policy, and refers to those whose opportunities to experience the arts are limited by geography, ethnicity, economics, or disability. All awards are $10,000 and require, again, a 1-to-1 match. It includes an abbreviated application process and robust technical assistance. So again, if you've never applied with us, we really strongly encourage you to check out the Challenge America program. And the deadline is typically in April of each year. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the Our Town program provides support for creative placemaking projects. So you might be asking, if you're not familiar, as I did when I first joined the NEA, what is creative placemaking? And the most simple definition is about strengthening local communities through arts and culture. Creative placemaking is when arts, culture, and design activities are deliberately integrated into efforts that strengthen communities. And successful Our Town projects ultimately lay the groundwork for systemic change that sustain the integration of those 3 key points, arts, culture, and design, into local strategies. There are some additional requirements for the Our Town program. Notably, eligibility does require a partnership between a nonprofit and local government. These grants range from $25,000 to $150,000, and again, require a 1-to-1 match. The guidelines are typically posted in May of every year, with a deadline that we have upcoming just next month. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our largest flagship program, and what most people think of when they think of an NEA grant, is through Grants for Arts Projects. Applications are submitted to one of 15 artistic disciplines, either at a February or July deadline each year. And the deadline this past year, as you may be familiar, was July 7th. But we really like to think of all this information as evergreen. So while the deadline has passed and you might be thinking, well, the next deadline isn't until February, take a look at the resources that we'll lay out at the end of the presentation. And it's never too early to at least get started. And if you have any questions, get in touch with me and we'll make sure that you're put into contact with the right discipline-specific expert at the NEA. And funding is available for all stages of the artistic process, and that can include creation, presentation, exhibition, arts education and enrichment, as well as services to the arts sector, such as conferences or professional development. Again, all grants require at least a one-to-one match, and these awards range from $10,000 to $100,000, and the project timeline can be for up to 2 years. So next slide, please. So I know the slide deck will be available to everyone who joined and signed up to participate today, but just a list of a few resources as you're thinking about applying with us. Check it. We have a number of different guidelines, webinars usually around deadlines, sometimes discipline specific. My colleagues are really great about setting up rooms that look just like this, Q&A sessions. Get in touch with us. As I often joke, our email addresses are almost too easy to find. Again, I will put mine in there, but I'll say it's just kesslerb@arts.gov, and all of our email addresses follow that same format. Take a look at sample project narratives, so past applicants. And always, if you have applied with us and the outcome wasn't what you were hoping for, always get in touch and you can seek panel feedback as to what you may have done, what you may do differently next time. And just the next slide, please. And we really encourage you to be part of the process and sign up to be a panelist. We hear from a lot of folks that having that experience and looking at the other side of the process really could not only be a great networking opportunity to meet people in your field, but also perhaps to learn and strengthen your application next time around. So please take a look. And just next slide, please. Wonderful. And then just the last slide from the NEA, just stay in touch with us. Follow us on social media. We have a ton of different newsletters. My colleagues are really wonderful at not spamming people. You can sign up for all sorts of artistic disciplines or general newsletter. But I think just the bottom line is please stay in touch with us. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you after this session. And with that, I'm glad to turn it over to my colleague in California, John.
Thanks,
Great,
Ben.
thank you. 1 second, sorry. Thank you, Ben.
Hi. Thank you all for having me. And to also a great thank you to the Congressman Correa's office and his leadership in supporting the work that needs to happen to strengthen our arts and culture community throughout the state of California, specifically as we're talking in his district here, Santa Ana. My name is Jonathan Moscone. I am newly appointed to the position, though I have been a member of the council for several years since the beginning of the pandemic. So I come from that immediate perspective and also a lifetime as a practitioner of the arts and arts administration as a theater director and artistic director here in the Bay Area. Next slide. So who are we? For those who don't know, we are here to support local arts infrastructure and programming throughout the state. We do it through grants, through programs and services. And it is our mission to strengthen arts, culture, and creative expression as the tools to cultivate a better California for all. Our values that are listed on the right are not there just to sound pretty and look nice, which they do, but they're to hold us accountable, and they are informing how we partner with our communities in the administering and implementation of programs throughout the state. You can learn more about that on our website. In the 46th district, since 2017, we have been able to secure and to get money out the door in the amount of $514,000. And in this current year, we have already $100,000 out the door into the 46th district, and there's more money to be coming as we continue to adjudicate 2022 grants. You can go forward. CAC in the community. We also are very grateful to the NEA for the support that came to us, which comes to us every year, but specifically with regards to the American Rescue Plan and CARES Fund, which we were able to bring to Orange County in the amount of at least $30,000. I want to take this moment because when I say CAC in the community, I don't want to bypass an important partner that is close to you all, and that is Arts Orange County, which advocates and strengthens the community in Orange County through a series of programs. And I can make sure that you get the email address in there, because they are our state and they are our partner in your community, among many other partners, but they're a designated partner, and they do extraordinary work for artists and organizations. Next slide. So we have some funding opportunities that exist right now, and they are for administering organizations whom will partner with us at the CAC to help bring money directly to the communities throughout California. And these particular grant opportunities are Arts Administrators Pipeline Fellowship and the Individual Artist Fellowships. This is both for individuals and organizations throughout the state. And you can check on our website for far more details on how to access that money, either as an administrating organization or when the timeline is when you can apply to those organizations for direct funding. And then to that point in early 2023, those AOs, administrating organizations who are our partners, will be able to offer direct funding for these programs. So that's a timeline for you to think on. And also our next season, which is 2023, will unveil as early as spring into the early summer, but we hope to do it as early as possible for you all. Ben is an expert at presenting, and he offered way more information than I did, being brand new. But I just want to let you know you can reach out to us in all these ways. I will also put my email into the chat so that you can reach out to us with any specific questions. We too offer webinars and office hours for all the opportunities that we have, so that we give everybody the opportunity to find out exactly answers to questions that they have that are very specific to their organization, because no one FAQ fits all. So we are working on being robust and nimble in our ability to provide technical assistance in the grant application process. So these are the ways you can reach us. And I will now yield my time back to you all and move over to humanities. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Monica.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. We'll move on to the National Endowment for Humanities. Let me put up these slides in 1 second for Alison to start sharing her content. Wonderful. So we can start with Alison share from the National Endowment for Humanities.
Thanks, Monica. Thank you all again today for being here. I want to thank the representative and his really great staff for putting today's webinar together. I think it speaks highly to Rep. Correa's leadership, excuse me, and commitment to the arts and humanities. And I appreciate the chance to be here along with my friend Ben and the California Arts Council and California Humanities. Next slide, please. Generally, I've been with NEH for about 8 months now, and the first question I often get is, what exactly are the humanities? And NEH founding legislation has a lovely list of words that tells you what the humanities is on paper, including literature, linguistics, jurisprudence, philosophy, archaeology, on and on and on, which can somewhat feel a bit dry. I actually think the best way to really demonstrate the humanities is through the projects that we fund. Next slide, please. We recently gave an education division grant to Chapman University to develop an Asian American Studies minor with an accompanying public humanities programming. This is an initiative to broaden the humanities courses offered at the university and to round out their new ethnic studies minor. The goal of these programs is to augment the educational opportunities offered by Chapman and to demonstrate commitment to a 21st century humanities education. Next slide, please. A few years ago, through our public programs division, we gave a grant to the Pacific Symphony Orchestra. They received 2 different grants to present 30 concerts to focus on the work of 3 major composers. These concerts were performed both in Orange County and other venues around the country. And each concert included a silent visual track projected on a big screen with paintings from the period, poetry text, and other materials that would provide a sense of the lifetime and music of these respective composers. They also further contextualized the musical performance with lectures, workshops, master classes, and post-concert discussions. Next slide. We also recently gave Chapman a different type of grant through 2 different grants through preservation and access and public programs. These grants were to help them digitize their current and future collection of American war letters and to help them create an online museum where these digitized collections can be viewed. As this is finished, it will feature war-related correspondences along with accompanying text, images, recording, and interactive elements that will tell the story of America at war through the words of troops, veterans, and their loved ones. Every major US conflict will be representative, and there will be ongoing special exhibits to focus on the contributions made by women and minorities during times of war. Next slide, please. And here's really the key message that I hope you take away with today. All of the information I'm going to tell you about is on our website at NEH.gov. We have a number of programs and they are highly competitive, but you really won't ever get a grant unless you apply. And if you're thinking about applying, make sure you read our notice of funding opportunity, also called the guidelines. I'll show you in a little bit where those can be found on our website. And to help you, these will both help you apply and write a better application, as well as provide contact information to number 4, the program officers. These are the folks that are really going to help you through the process. Next slide, please. In terms of eligibility, we have institutions that can be eligible as well as individuals. For an institution like the NEA, we also require institutions to be 501c3 statuses, this libraries, museums, universities. We also have specific individual grant programs as well for scholars doing research and writing. These can be independent scholars as well as faculty at colleges and universities. Applicants must be either citizens or residents, or reside in the US for at least 3 years before the application deadline. Students, unfortunately, are not eligible. Next slide, please. Also, unlike the NEA, we have 38 different grant programs. I'm not going to walk through all of them to save us all some time, but they are broken out into 6 different divisions. So when you're thinking about what grant program to apply for, you really want to think about the audience for the grant product. Each of our divisions targets different groups. So for example, if you're serving the general public, like museum visitors or people watching documentaries, think about our public programs. If you're aimed at researchers and library users, think about preservation and access. If it's classroom focused, think about education. Your research writing for scholars or general readers, that's going to be in your research program. So when you really go to the website, which we'll turn to in a minute, it's really think about the audience, and that'll help start you on your journey. The 7th division is our Office of Federal and State Partnership. It doesn't necessarily have a competitive grant program, but does play a vital role in the operation of the 56 state and jurisdiction humanities councils, including California Humanities, who will be speaking right after me. Next slide, please. As I said, the best source of information is our website, NEH.gov, all of our grant programs, and a ton of other information. You can see the link there at the top of the page with that helpful yellow arrow. Inside that link, you'll find additional information about upcoming grant deadlines, as well as an online database with all of our previous grants that we have given out. The site also includes a page for each division, and on that page are links for every grant offering. Those links will tell you the application deadline, the funding statistics for that program in recent years, and who to contact if you have questions. Next slide, please. Under the grants tab, where that yellow arrow in the last slide was pointing, you'll find a list of our divisions and offices. And then if you click on a specific office, you will see the full list of grants. Next slide, please. For example, we have the Division of Preservation and Access, and on the right side is listed all of their grants. And scrolling through the list, if you click on one, it'll bring you to the grant information page. This is where you will find everything you need to know, including examples of previous applications, deadlines, how to apply, and most importantly, who to contact if you're interested in learning more. Next slide. Just a few tips. Reach out early. Program officers can help you navigate the grant process from application to final report. They can help you determine whether you have the right grant program for your project, and they can offer advice on preparing applications. For many of our grants, program officers actually will read and offer feedback on draft proposals in advance of the deadline. Contact information varies by specific grant program, and as I had stated earlier, it can be found on the specifics page. You should carefully read the materials. It's dense, but helpful. Make sure you involve all your project participants in the draft. Use our search function to find other institutions that may have already received a grant and reach out to them for feedback. You should really think about using our draft option for feedback and comments prior to the application deadline. Often these are very helpful in finalizing applications. And last but not least, whether you're successful or not, you should always reach back out to the program officer to request comments on your application. Next slide. All applications for NEH grants go through a very in-depth review process. Starts with NEH staff, and then we move to the next step. It's central to the work we do at NEH, and that's the outside peer review panel. During this peer review process, evaluators read applications, write comments, and provide ratings on all of the applications. And then they provide that rating and comments to NEH staff. The NEH staff in turn reviews those comments, works through how many projects can be funded, and confirms eligibility and passes it along up to the next step, which is consideration by the National Council on the Humanities. These are Senate confirmed individuals. They are scholars in the humanities nominated by the president. And then the council makes recommendations to the chair, who takes all of this into consideration and makes the final decision. It's a pretty long process, but it allows for a very rich and in-depth review. It also explains why sometimes, depending on the grant, it can take up to a year between when your application is due and when you're going to hear the results. Next slide. As I said earlier, this is a very competitive process, and for many of our programs, we can only fund around 10% of the applications we received. So don't get discouraged. Instead, make plans to reapply. Reach out to the program officer, get the feedback from the peer review panels, ask questions, and then work on your new application. We find generally that applications are much more likely to be successful the second time around. Next slide, please. I hope this has been helpful at a kind of a 10,000 foot level. I will also drop my personal email in the chat. You can write to congressional@neh.gov, and you can follow us on all of these platforms. And I'm now going to turn it over to Kirsten Vega of California Humanities.
Thanks, Allison, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you to Lou Correa's office and to Allison and Monica behind the scenes for arranging this webinar. My name is Kirsten Vega, and I, for the last 4 years, have been Program Associate at California Humanities, which is an independent nonprofit organization and partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. So much of what Allison has just shared with you will apply to our programs and our philosophy to grant making. We were founded in 1975 at the same act of Congress that the NEA and the NEH were founded. So we are in community as public arts and humanities funders. What's important to know about California Humanities is that we have 2 offices, Los Angeles and Oakland, but we fund in every congressional corner of the state. And in the last few years, we've awarded over 20 grants to the Orange County, Santa Ana area in District 46. Next slide, please. Right now, we have 3 major funding opportunities, grant programs. Generally, we grant about an average of $1 million annually to California nonprofit organizations in these categories. And today I'm going to tell you about our 3 grant programs, the California Documentary Project, which supports film, video, and new media, the Humanities for All grant program, which has 2 lines for small and large-scale humanities projects, and Library Innovation Lab, which is our professional development program for California librarians who want to work with new Americans and immigrants in their library settings. Next slide, please. So if you are interested in these programs, first of all, I would encourage you to visit our website. We have a matrix online that shows upcoming grant opportunities, guidelines, and FAQs for any program that might be of interest to you. We also have contact information for our program officers who, like in the case of the NEH, are always happy to read your project description early in the stage of your application, review a draft, provide comments, and generally offer counsel and advisement on any ideas you might have for a grant project. So you can write to me and I'm happy to put you in touch with the right person. Next slide, please. To be eligible for a grant at California Humanities, first of all, you must be a California-based nonprofit organization, or if you're an individual scholar or individual artist, you'll need to partner with a fiscal sponsor that does have tax-exempt status. Generally, applicants are not able to have an active grant application or an active grant at the time of their inquiry. And you must also be in good standing with California Humanities if you've had a recent grant. That translates to having successfully closed your most recent grant. And in the case of certain programs, there might be a short waiting period before you can apply again. We have lots of information about these eligibility requirements in our guidelines. Next slide. Okay, now to talk a bit about Humanities for All program. This program supports a broad range of public-facing projects and programs. Our goal with it is to engage all people in all parts of California through humanities learning experiences in the public sphere. We invite the participation of academic institutions, scholars, and students, but also cultural organizations, small nonprofits, small museums, community groups. No matter, as Ben said earlier, no matter the size of your organization, there's probably a grant here for you, and we encourage you to take a look. Next slide, please. You might have to click a few times, Monica, because there's a delayed. Thank you. So there are 2 funding streams in the Humanities for All line. There are quick grants, which are meant to support projects of a 1-year duration and can award between $1,000 and $5,000 a year. These are for small projects and they're awarded frequently so they can be responsive to what's going on in communities in California. We offer them 3 times a year and the turnaround is relatively quick. Within 2 months, you'll hear whether you've been awarded and your agency can receive the funds. We have a deadline coming up in October and then another one in, I believe, February. Project grants are for larger, longer term projects that are generally going to unfold over 2 years. We can award up to $25,000 for these projects, and you also are given a membership in a cohort of fellow grantees who will meet 2 times throughout the grant period to support one another. The next deadline for project grants is August 1st, and then there'll be another in 2023. Next slide, please. Humanities for All projects tend to fall along these 3 categories: participatory, engaging a public audience; interpretive, maybe gallery programming, exhibition labels, lectures, after film discussions; or narrative, printed materials that complement book, film, oral history, archival projects. You can see a comprehensive list of everything we've funded on our website, divided by grant program. So if you'd like to get a sense of whether your project is a good fit, we encourage you to read through some recent projects to get a sense of what might be a good candidate for HFA funding. Next slide, please. Quickly, just a few examples of things we've funded recently. This is Little Tokyo Drift. It is a festival in Los Angeles called Nisei Car Week. It was a festival that started in the 1980s to celebrate the car culture of Los Angeles and car racing in Los Angeles. And it was outlawed for about a decade, and recently the festival has been revived. So some humanities scholars gathered together to put on panels and have discussions about the meaning of the festival, the cultural sphere that it brings to Los Angeles, and more. That's a great example of a quick grant. And on the next slide, we'll see our program California Documentary Project. So this is our media grant that seeks to document California in all of its complexity. Projects that are funded through California Documentary Grant are often supported in other public spaces like PBS or KQED. We have several strains. On the next slide, you can see there is a research and development grant that is for a new project, new makers who are just entering the early phases of a project, and maybe they would like to work with humanities advisors or start doing interviewing and humanities methodologies to support their documentary unfolding. There's also a production grant. This is a larger grant that goes up to $50,000 for the production of a documentary media or new media film. And then NextGen is a program we offer on an annual basis for youth programs that are working with colleges, community colleges, public radio stations in order to train the next generation of media makers in California. Next slide, please. An example of a recent CDP film was When Medicine Got It Wrong, a fascinating story about the beginnings of cultural understanding of schizophrenia, which until the 1970s was believed to be caused by mothers in upbringing at home. And so this film documents the organizing efforts of a small group of parents in California back in the 70s, and they really changed the definition and field of mental health with their efforts. Next slide, please. A podcast recently funded through this project is What Fire Reveals. This was put on by the Kitchen Sisters, a podcasting duo who interviewed families that had been displaced by wildfire in the Santa Cruz Mountains and installed a small exhibit at a local museum and shared the audio and video online with the public. Next slide, please. The last program I'll cover is Library Innovation Lab. This is a program I am the co-chair of. It launched in 2017 in order to respond to California's increasing diversity in its communities. We partnered with public libraries to create a learn by doing professional experience for librarians who wanted to learn how to research, plan, and implement programs that would welcome immigrants into their communities and create a more multicultural environment at public libraries. This program provides $5,000 of risk capital for librarians to do new types of programming, but also a one-year program in a peer cohort where new skills and resources are offered to increase the language accessibility and community outreach capacity of public libraries all over the state of California. And on the next slide, I can tell you about the Marigold series, which was at the Sunnyvale Public Library a couple of years ago. The Sunnyvale Public Library, I think similar to Orange County, has a really diverse community of more than 150,000 people and a considerably large Middle Eastern and Latino immigrant population who interestingly share a linguistic and cultural overlap. So this librarian staged multiple festivals simultaneously to point out the connections between these two cultures, a Dia de los Muertos celebration alongside a Diwali celebration in the fall of 2019. So if you're interested in any of these programs, again, I encourage you to reach out to our council and we'd be more than happy to talk with you about grant opportunities. So I think the last few slides here we'll talk a little bit about how to apply. So all of our grant applications are online on our grant portal. You can generally count on needing all of these components, basic form, narrative, budget, and certification for our grant programs. You may also be able to submit supplementary materials like previous work, letters of support, timelines of your activities, or MOUs if you're using a fiscally sponsored project. Next slide. Some advice, if you're interested in seeking a grant at California Humanities, we encourage you to make this humanities central to your work, to think about how to engage an audience with minimum barriers to entry, and to demonstrate in what ways you've responded to community interest. Next slide, please. And we do offer a range of applicant support services, the counseling I mentioned earlier, but also a calendar of 9 grant applicant webinars to go into detail about how to craft a successful and strong application in these areas. And we have also now been doing a webinar series called Tools of the Trade, which offers even more guidance and support to public humanities practitioners looking for grant support and attention from the media. Next slide, please. And this is a quick slide I put together with some other California resources. You've heard certainly some great information from the NEH, the NEA, and California Arts Council, but I also encourage you to look to the California State Library and their Office of Historic Preservation and some of the other names on this list, like the Institute of Museum and Library Services. They have strong grant-making arms as well that are worth looking into. And on the last slide here, you'll see my contact information as well as the California Humanities social media handles. And we do have a monthly e-newsletter that I'll put the link to subscribe to in the chat if you're interested. Okay, thanks so much. That's it for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kirsten. That is the end of our presentation. We are going to move on to a Q&A. So if you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will go ahead and answer them the best we can. So Alison has a question for Kirsten. Can a university apply to both Humanities for All and California documentary projects concurrently with the same project director for different components of a larger project?
Unfortunately, we could only take one application in that case, but if you were to have another project director working on a separate project under a fiscal sponsor, it might be possible to apply for both, but generally no, it's one application per organization at a time. Thanks for the question.
While we're waiting for another question, Monica, I just want to, I was so moved by the mentions of some stories of some of the grantees that you all did. And I just want to mention that we had one too from Libro Mobile Arts Cooperative, which support from CAC, the cooperative will maintain operations required in providing free literary arts performing and programming that prioritizes local BIPOC writers and artists with the goal of creating access to cultural empowerment, financial support, and arts leadership in Orange County and beyond. It's a small organization, but they have such an extraordinary impact. So no matter what size you are, if your impact is genuine and real, that is a great case for us. And I just was so moved by reading about them. I just wanted to share that.
That's wonderful.
I see that as people maybe hopefully are thinking of other questions, just piggybacking off what John just said, and I know other folks touched on it, but one thing that I always like to say, it's a question that we get, I know in the humanities too, is I'm a small organization, I'm volunteer run, is it really worth it for me to apply? And I think we want to begin at the point of we understand that it's a real investment of resources when you choose to apply at the federal, state, or local level. And it's not, especially if you're small or volunteer run, you don't take that decision lightly because it could be significant resources. And we know it's not enough to say, oh, well, now you've met Alison, you've met me, you've met John, you've met Kirsten. You know, that isn't that good? You know, isn't that your return on investment? And we know it's not the same as actually receiving a grant. But, you know, as Alison says so eloquently, you will not receive a grant if you don't apply. But at the same time, you know, just stay in touch with us. We want to make sure that there is that return on investment. I like to think if I've done my job well, if we've done our job well, if you're not successful this time around, the question is, would you apply again? As Alison said, that they, you know, such an uptick in success rates that second time. So we hope the answer is always yes, but what's most important is that you stay in touch with us as you're applying. Start early. I know the Congressman's office offered a workshop about grants.gov. Get familiar with those systems. We never want someone to be able to apply because of a technical hiccup. So really just, you know, strongly encourage, dive into the applications at the federal and state level, and just always stay in touch with us, please.
So I noticed that a lot of people asked about the slides and the webinar, and Monica can answer this, but we are hoping to have this webinar available on our website. She could talk a little bit more, but you can reach out to Monica and she can provide her email address if you need the slides sooner. Monica, do you have more information?
Yes, so every webinar that's going to be in the series will be recorded. I know we are still working on uploading the last webinar, but it should be on the Congressman's YouTube page. So this one has been recorded and will also be uploaded. And I know there's no more questions, but if you have any questions or if you think of any questions, I can put my email address down below so you can contact me directly. We are also more than happy to provide letters of support for any organizations applying to any of these grants that were mentioned today. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. That's my email. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for presenting today. Great content. It was great. Thank you so much. No problem.